What's going on, guys? It's Elias. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. For today's video, we're going to be going over something that I find quite interesting. I've traveled the world a lot. I do a lot of traveling for work, and I've noticed a few things that are pretty weird in the United States when it comes to car ownership. There's a few things I want to cover here, and if I find them interesting, I thought maybe you'd find them interesting. So I think there's like 5 or 6 things that are very interesting and weird when it comes to owning cars and being a car enthusiast in North America. So let's go over them. So for the first one that we're covering today, it's truck ownership. And yes, I own a truck myself. I totally get why people love trucks here in America, but it doesn't seem that the love of trucks really goes outside of North America too much. Yeah, there's a few countries here and there that have pickup trucks, but America is basically the center of the world when it comes to truck ownership. I mean, the best sold vehicles in America are always trucks, and it's almost always the Ford F-150. Now, I'm not a big fan of the F-150 for many reasons. I can go over them in another video. So I bought myself this Colorado ZR2 diesel. It's an off-road truck. I have a lot of property back here, 21 acres. I have to do some logging and things like that. And this has gone off-road a lot with me. But it's also towed and done a bunch of things. I think one of the factors is here that it's a lot of wide open spaces here, and it's something that we as Americans take for granted. But if you go to Europe, if you go to Paris, if you go to any other the Middle Eastern countries, Japan for example, everything is very narrow, everything is small. So owning a truck in those areas is kind of a pain in the butt. But for us here in America, trucks are definitely where it's at. This next one is super weird, and it has to do with that right there. Tailpipe emissions. Now, pretty much everywhere in the world, every single country has their own way of monitoring tailpipe emissions for cars. I think the United States is unique in that emissions testing and emissions, how much people care about emissions, varies from state to state. For example, I have property in South Dakota, and they really don't care about pretty much anything. It's a free state. Now, if you take this same car and bring it to New York State, it'll be a very different story. I used to live in New York State, and I know very well that you can, even if you get your windows tinted, even if you get pretty much anything done to this car, you will not pass emissions. So it's just kind of weird how in the same exact country you can cross a invisible border in the same country, and the car will be legal in one state and illegal in the next state. Same goes for my S2000, for example. My S2000 here in Pennsylvania, the exhaust, absolutely no problem. It'll pass inspection, nobody cares about it, nobody looks at it, cops don't care about it, not a big deal at all. Now, when it comes to the same exact exhaust, and this is the 8KS high power exhaust, in case you guys are wondering, this exhaust will be super illegal in California. It is over the dB levels, and you're bound to get fined, you're bound to get all kinds of trouble just for owning that same exact exhaust. That's pretty unique that this country has so many varying different laws state to state. I think that's pretty weird about the United States, and actually, I kind of love it. This next one is honestly very disappointing, and that's the fact that diesel cars never really took hold here in the United States. Right here, we're looking at a BMW 335D. This is an E90, a 2011 Sport Package 335D. Currently has 140,000 miles, and I love it to death. It is my favorite long-distance cruiser. This thing will do mile after mile after mile, and you'll be comfortable. You'll get close to 40 miles to the gallon. It spits out close to 400 horsepower and it's almost 600 foot-pounds of torque to the crank. And to the wheels, I mean, it's just a powerhouse. This thing pulls like a freight train, and I've loved it since I've owned it. We've owned it for about 7 years, I think now, maybe 6. And every single year, every single time we take it out, it's been amazing. Now, to theorize on maybe why diesels never took off in America, I think there's 2 things that happened. First was back in the 70s, diesels were starting to become a real thing for the world, and American car companies really wanted in on this whole diesel thing. So they started making their own diesels, but man, were they terrible. I think GM or Chrysler made a V8 or V6 diesel engine that didn't run, even from the factory. It didn't run properly. It leaked like crazy. The compression was low. It gave you like 30 horsepower. It was horrible, and put that in a bunch of cars and sold it. And so sometimes the first taste of diesel that Americans got was one of those American crappy diesels, and Americans were like, what the heck is diesel? This thing is garbage. Get it out of my face. So that basically is what happened in the 70s and 80s. Fast forward now to mid 2000s, and diesels are starting to take a hold again. This is a 2011 car. BMW was responding to Volkswagen's success in the diesel markets. So Volkswagen sold a lot of diesels, especially TDIs, a lot of TDI models. They range from the Volkswagen Rabbit TDI, I believe the Beetle, the Bug had a TDI option. It was basically all the same 4-cylinder turbo force diesel engines, and they were pretty good. They're actually excellent. The problem is they were excellent because they did not meet the emission standards for modern diesels. And henceforth, we know about Dieselgate. So those two things have really killed off the diesel in America. And I think they're starting to wane worldwide. But as of this date, as of today, if you go anywhere else in the world, diesel engines are pretty much everywhere. In the United States, they're almost nowhere. Good luck finding a diesel station that sells diesel for cars. For the most part, they're made for trucks. Now this next one I actually learned from you guys, from my subscribers. So I do appreciate when you guys leave comments, when you message me, you follow me on Instagram. You could follow my Instagram, it's FlyinGato. You could message me, you can email me on realflyingato@gmail.com. But I learned that in a lot of countries, a lot of especially kind of Scandinavian countries and European countries, you cannot modify a car at all and drive it on the road. So we're looking here at my Honda Prelude because this is pretty highly modified as it is. My Type R is not yet quite modified. It will get there, but my Prelude specifically is very modified. So what I've done to this, just really quickly, I've changed the brake pads to Hawk DTC60s. I got Koenig wheels with the largest, the widest tires and wheels I can get on them. Hankook RS4s, really good tires. I love these things. They're very, very long lasting and actually grip really, really well. I've got a full headers back exhaust. I have a few other modifications. If we go inside, we can take a look. We have these seats right here, a nice Curbo seat with a full harness. We got a roll bar. We have a upgraded suspension. So we have coilovers, kind of a cheap coilover design, but hey, this is my budget racer, so it is what it is. And it's quite a lovely car. I love this car to death. I've owned this for a very long time. And quite honestly, if I really want to right now, let me see if the plate's still on it. Yep, the plate's still on it. I can call up my insurance company, ask them to put road insurance on it. They'll do it immediately. And I can take this car for a drive in the streets with zero issues. Now, in most, well, not most, in a lot of countries I know, I've learned from you guys, that would be impossible. You can't even change the wheel size, let alone everything else that I've changed in this car. So, something weird and interesting about the differences between America and the rest of the world. Another weird aspect of car ownership in America is our availability of fuel. Now, I'm not talking about diesel. We already spoke about diesel. I'm talking specifically about gasoline. Now, in the United States, we measure the octane of our fuel differently than we do in Europe and the rest of the world. I'm also not talking about that. We know that, RON plus, etc. Yeah, there's different ways to measure it. The thing I'm talking about is that the quality of fuel in the United States, and now this is according to manufacturers, car manufacturers, Honda, BMW, etc. The quality is not as good as it is in the rest of the world. Now, I have a couple theories on what exactly they mean by that, but I think one of the main things that some people forget, and I remembered because I was actually in California not too long ago, I think it was like a month ago, and in California, the best octane rating you can get is 91 octane. Now, that's actually not what I can get here in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, you can get 93. So you can get a higher octane rating gasoline in Pennsylvania than you can in California. Now there's emissions and there's other things at play here. There's politics at play, unfortunately, but I think that's one thing affecting the quality of fuel when the rest of the world basically has access, and I'm talking about Europe and Japan and the rest of the developed world has access to high octane fuel, where in America, California and other states in the West only have up to 91 octane. That sucks. So manufacturers, for I think since the inception of time, in my opinion, or at least as far as I can remember, I'll give you an example. The S2000, the Japanese motor in the S2000 made 240 horsepower and I forget how much torque, but it made a little bit more horsepower than the S2000 in the US. The US S2000 only made like 235, 238, something like that, and it's a different tune, different compression ratio. We're back at the Prelude because the Prelude has the same issue. The US Prelude made 195 horsepower, whereas the Japanese Prelude made 220 horsepower. Because again, the Japanese H22A, which by the way this car has, we swapped it in. Well, I didn't. I bought it swapped in already. The Japanese engine has higher compression ratio than the American H22 engine. And again, it has to do with fuel quality and octane rating and availability of fuel for the entire US. Remember, when car companies sell cars to the United States, they have to sell it for all of the US. So if California is screwing us over, all of America gets screwed over. Something to think about. All right, so that wraps up the video. I found it very interesting to kind of point out those facts, and I thought you guys might enjoy that as well. I think the last thing I want to mention is that the United States really is a very big country. If you take the outline of just mainland United States and put it over Europe, all of Europe, including a little bit of Eastern Europe, will fit within the boundaries of the United States of America. It's a large country, it's a vast country, it's a beautiful country. I love being American, and yeah, it gets a little weird, but guess what? Freedom is a little weird. I'll have it no other way. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time. Peace.